My name is Syed Assad. I'm a neurologist, and today we're going to be talking about memory. Memory is a complicated cognitive functioning, and we are born with a certain number of neurons, and we do lose some neurons as we go through life. So there is something called age-associated memory loss. However, as we get older, we learn how to use the neurons that we have left better, and so people generally get wiser as they get older. Unfortunately, there are some conditions, some reversible, some unfortunately not reversible, that can cause a more significant loss of memory over time. So some of these things could be vitamin deficiency, someone could be exposed to heavy metals like lead, mercury, arsenic, they could have thyroid disease, you can have infections like Lyme disease. So there's various conditions that can affect memory. Sometimes people have cognitive impairment related to traumatic brain injuries, which we see quite a bit. Unfortunately, and usually in the later stages of life, people can have neurodegenerative conditions like Alzheimer's disease and frontotemporal dementia, where they also start losing memory, and this can be progressive over time. So just like everything else, the more you use something, the better it works, and if you don't use it, you lose it. So I always tell people, if you exercise your muscles will get buff, and if you don't, they will turn into fat. The brain is similar, and so one of the ways to sharpen memory is to actually utilize the brain. So they've done studies where they have people watching TV, and then they place them in a functional MRI camera, which looks at brain activity, and the more parts of the brain that are active, the more activity you see. When you're watching TV, you have two little dots in the occipital cortex, which is the back of the brain, that's the visual cortex, and nothing else. So TV is fine, it's great for entertainment. Unfortunately, it doesn't do anything for activating the brain or working the brain. On the other hand, they've had people solve a bunch of math problems, and all of a sudden you have 20 different parts of the brain light up. In other words, solving math problems is a good way to exercise the brain. Unfortunately, most people are not interested in sitting and solving math problems. So I always tell people to identify things that they enjoy, but that are also activating for the brain. So for example, some of the most powerful ways to activate the brain are to learn how to speak a new language or play a new musical instrument. But if that's too much, you could solve crossword puzzles, you could do Sudoku. There's a lot of things that you can do to activate your brain. There's also some really good resources online. So for example, Lumosity.com, Happify, Brain Fitness Pro. These are just some of the programs that people can go on and exercise their brain. Sometimes when people have memory problems, it's related to how they're feeling. So the number one cause of pseudo-dementia, as in it's not dementia but it looks like dementia, is actually depression. And depression is a treatable condition. It can be treated with medications. It can also be treated non-pharmacologically with neurobiofeedback and with cognitive behavioral therapy and with regular exercise, and there's a whole host of other ways to treat depression. So identifying and treating depression is important. Sometimes a person may just be scatterbrained because they have too much going on and just need some direction in helping them organize. Sometimes it could be anxiety, and when you're anxious, you don't pay attention to things that you should be committing to memory. People can have attention deficit disorder, which is another condition where if you're not paying attention, you're not committing things to memory, and hence you have memory loss. And once we identify the thought pattern or the mood issue that's underlying the memory problems, addressing and treating those can really help people improve their memory. Short-term memory is things that you just experienced, and if you were asked to recall it right away or in 5 minutes. Long-term memory is things that happened a long time ago, and you're having to recall them. Interestingly, a lot of people who develop cognitive impairment lose short-term memory before long-term memory. Part of the reason is when you experience something, let's say you go to the Niagara Falls and you witness the waterfalls and you hear the sounds and the smells, all those stimuli go to the appropriate parts of your brain. So what you're seeing goes to your visual cortex, what you're hearing goes to your auditory cortex. Now from there, it has to go to the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain where memory is tagged, and then it gets stored in those parts of your brain. Now if I went to the Niagara Falls like 20 years ago, when I'm thinking about it right now, I'm recalling whatever was stored in my hard drive back then. That's long-term memory. What I had, to eat for lunch today, that's short-term memory. And so because 20 years ago, the data was stored in my hard drive and I can still retrieve it, I have long-term memory. But if there's a blockage in my entorhinal cortex, which is the part of the brain that the impulses have to traverse through to get to the hippocampus, I could have short-term memory loss. And so part of the reason I gave that example is because in Alzheimer's disease, you have these plaques and tangles form in the entorhinal cortex, and that prevents information from getting into the hippocampus. So a lot of these people, especially in the early stages, will be able to recall things from the past, but won't be able to tell you what they had for lunch earlier that day. Again, my name is Dr. Syed Assad, and thank you for watching.